All right, now hands forward. Kiss, kiss. Tap, tap.
Behind every great vacation rental is a destination ambassador, someone who introduces the town or city to visitors in a fun and authentic way. Sometimes it's through interior decor. Other times it's through tips and introductions in the local community. And when choosing the right property for vacation, I tend to look for a combination of both. A property that tells a story, whatever that story might be. Back before tourism was such big business, Florida was known for its slower pace of life. Small towns were powered by mom and pop shops. Kids would roam freely, and things were simple. This era is fondly referred to as Old Florida, and it's all but disappeared with the onset of technology and development. Once quaint beach destinations are now home to big resorts and expansive strip malls. But remnants of old Florida charm do still exist if you look for them carefully, and vacation rentals are a great place to start. The term vacation rental can mean a lot of things, but at the very core, it's a movement unlocking a whole new way to travel. For years, I've immersed myself in the community of people leading this movement, and I'd like to share with you their stories as we rediscover hospitality on a whole new level. My name's Matt Landau, and this is A Sense of Place.
Ta-da!
Is that a microphone?
No, it's my GoPro. I want to get some good fun. Oh, mwah. Good to see you.
See you too.
Awesome. I'm so excited you're here.
All right.
I know, right? We're going to have fun.
Hi, Matt.
Yeah.
Michael, nice to meet you. The other half.
The other half. I've heard a lot about you.
My ambassador of Old Florida was Nancy McAleer, someone who lives most of the year with her husband Michael in Montreal, some 1,500 miles away. Nancy's part of an increasingly growing kind of vacation rental professional who manages their vacation rental from afar with the help of technology and old-fashioned persistence. When you ask Nancy if she thinks a remote host can achieve the same quality as a host who lives on site, she's almost offended, claiming that when done properly, the remote recipe works better because it forces you to be overly prepared for anything that might come your way. Nancy's vacation rental story starts off like many. Adversity forced her to find a new path forward.
It actually started a long time ago in the recession when I lost my job as a director in a major retail company. And at that point I was calling my husband crying on the phone, they're going through bankruptcy protection. So what are we gonna do? It was a little bit of a scary moment. My husband was so gracious and kind, and God, I love him. He said, don't worry about it, we're gonna be fine. We're gonna rebudget, we're gonna live our lives, everything's gonna be okay. And I had this little epiphany. I said, what if we get a vacation rental in Florida? And I said, and then we can rent it out to cover all the costs, and we still have some place to vacation to as a family, because at that point it was really tight on money. I didn't think we'd even be able to vacation. And then later on we had that same conversation with our best friends, Mike and Terry, and Mike piped up and said, I'm interested to buy a property in Florida.
Their final product is Sirenia by the Sea, a 5-bedroom vacation home on the water that represents much more than a place to just lay your head. It's where groups come together to recharge their batteries. It's where families regroup to enjoy the important stuff. How Nancy built her business wasn't rocket science, but as I'd learn in the days to come, it certainly wasn't dropped into her lap either. I've always loved the idea of painting, but it's always been purely aspirational. I envision my dream home as having this room dedicated solely to painting. Via email, Nancy introduced me to Corey Wright, a prominent local artist who you can see painting beach landscapes and giving watercolor boot camps to kids and adults alike. Since her adult classes would fall outside of my scheduled visit, Corey suggested I join one of her kids' classes.
I do the same kind of thing for adults, and they're just so tentative, like that they're going to do it wrong. And kids are like, so what do I do? Where do you go? And as a result, the results are usually much more spontaneous.
As my contemporaries began to arrive, we shared some small talk before diving into 3 different kinds of fish paintings. On my right was a pretty famous artist named Brooklyn, and to my left was Gigi, who specializes in seahorses.
Keep going, you guys. It's a very cool look. You got some Sharpie right here.
I think it's mine.
It's pretty amazing. I saw it earlier. Mateo.
Well, thank you.
It's like Nero.
And by the end, when it was time to show our work to the waiting parents, this may sound cheesy, but I was reminded how much I really do enjoy art and how often I let it intimidate me from actually getting started.
1, 2, 3.
Fishies!
Great. It almost makes you smile more than cheese.
One of the best things about choosing a vacation rental is being introduced to locals. At the end of watercolor class, Mason's mom suggested I check out the annual Stone Crab Festival, located in the nearby fishing town of Cortez. Stone crab's one of my absolute favorite foods on the planet, so there was no way I was going to pass this up.
That's colossal. Which one is colossal?
I invited Corey, along with her husband John, and learned about the history of Cortez, a hardworking community that seems to have successfully staved off many of the threats of economic development that are so common elsewhere in Florida. I learned that the Cortesians, as they call themselves, are more than just proud people. They're highly self-sufficient. During the Depression years, in fact, Cortez was the only community in the United States that required no federal aid, subsisting on plentiful catches of mullet.
It's heavy. Are you enjoying watching me? It's mesmerizing. I almost don't want to eat it. I don't think I'll ever have one this big again. A colossal. So amazing.
When I travel, I love to ask my vacation rental connections about interesting running routes. They're almost always more challenging and interactive than a hotel treadmill, and they allow you to see new layers of a destination. Corey's husband John was just the insider I needed, and Robert, a representative of the show's sponsor, A Bundle, had flown into town late the previous night, and as the sun was just peeking over the horizon, we explored the waterfront promenade and one of Anna Maria Island's precious nature preserves. Relatively few people take advantage of these parks, John explained, but we did, and meandering up this little mountaintop to overlook the bay, it was one of the most serene ways I can imagine starting my day. I wanted to get a taste of Anna Maria Island from the sea, and of course Nancy had the perfect contacts.
Miss Yetta! That's the coolest name. I've never met a Yetta.
That's my grandmother's name.
Steve is way less unique. And I'm Matt. Nice to meet you.
Yetta and Steve of Anna Maria Island Outfitters, something of a landmark on Pine Street, just a few blocks away from my rental. The shop retains that hand-picked charm that big box stores and online outlets seem to so sorely lack these days.
Some people call it retail jail because you have to be open all the time. And, you know, we were open 7 days a week. Now we're only open 6 days a week because I let him go fishing on Monday.
Very kind.
Isn't it?
Yetta comes from the world of PR, and Steve brought his previous life as a nature photographer.
He always says listen to your customers, which you really can't do on the wholesale side, but he's really good at people But reading people and finding out what they need and what their skill level is for fly fishing, for example, and
but you may find that out today.
Apparently. Steve likes to invite his clients to tag along in that classic old Floridian sort of way, basically free of charge. Steve asked me to help lower the boat into the water by holding on to 2 specific ropes.
I was asked to do one thing, 2 yellow ropes, and I successfully let go of one.
Having learned the basics of fly fishing with Hunter in Blue Ridge, I put my skills to work and almost immediately began catching fish, albeit small ones.
That's beautiful.
They are beautiful. It looks just like a trout, right? It's just a spotted sea trout.
And on with the video editing software, we can make it look huge.
10 times bigger, yeah. Of course, I'll be 10 feet tall, but get him back in the water.
Steve was as gracious as could be, pointing out rays and dolphins and the importance of choosing the right partner, both in business and in life. We passed by Cortez, the town I met a day earlier with Corey and John, and I asked if we could stop at Starfish, a simple dockside restaurant with cold beer and fresh fried seafood on paper plates.
So I started with fly fishing and spin fishing, and we've really kind of grown that. A lot of people love saltwater fly fishing, and they want to know more about it.
And what are the outfits that take people out, like guide-wise?
Well, we've got several guides that we book. We've got about a half a dozen of them that love fly fishing, that are real good at it, and they'll take you out.
And that's something that's available to most tourists, huh?
Oh yeah, anybody.
Yeah. Oh, look at that! Oh! That's incredible!
And while we didn't catch anything too significant on the water that day, we did make it back in time for sunset. Sunsets are outrageously good in Anna Maria Island, and one of Nancy's top recommendations for guests is to hire AJ Leteri of The Loft Catering for a beach picnic.
Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Hi there, how are you today?
When she's not hosting open-air farm-to-table dinners or cultivating relationships with local organic farmers, AJ's on a mini mission to bring back the picnic culture. And it was using her service that was a real luxury for me as a vacationer. Being able to unpack a beach blanket, some drinks, vegetable kebabs, and Israeli couscous, all without doing literally any work, was pretty much the best way to end my day. Since Nancy manages Sirenia by the Sea from Montreal, she doesn't have the chance to interact with most of her contacts in person. In many cases, she's never actually met them. And this can be a really challenging thing. Having complete strangers in your home and around your town can be really painful if not done properly. But what Nancy lacks in physical presence, she makes up for with smart investments. Investments in the right people on the ground. People like Chelsea and her company, Gulfside Cleaning Solutions.
Nancy's so good about sending us the reviews.
What were they saying?
Just the house was perfect and the kitchen had everything it needs. The hot tub and pool is amazing and the house is overall very clean, and that they will definitely be back.
And do you share those reviews with other, your team?
Oh, absolutely.
I love that.
Yes. Yes. I'm like, look what a good job you did.
That's such
Very
an easy thing for owners to do. Share good reviews with every person that went into that.
Yes.
You know?
Because in this industry, it's tough because sometimes it's usually like no news is good news. So it's so nice to hear the good, because in this industry, it's always like, oh, you missed this and you did that wrong. And it's like, if some people could just see like how much work goes into getting these places ready in 6 hours, it's like, I think they would understand more.
Yeah, they're
like,
rock stars. What would you do without Chelsea?
I don't know what I'd do without Chelsea. I mean, it took us a long time to find a Chelsea. She's one of a kind. So she's not going anywhere.
Nancy also makes smart investments in the right amenities. And this is where the show's sponsor, A Bundle, is worth introducing. They're a company that offers hotel-tested products to vacation rental professionals. What used to only be available in huge bulk is now accessible to people like Nancy with 1 or 2 vacation rental properties. Spending a little bit more on durable sheets or the right sets of towels also reduces Nancy's workload a great deal. These kinds of investments seem to go a really long way.
All right. A little for her, a little for you.
Thank you.
Nancy's hospitality from afar is best epitomized by the Sea Ponies, a tour that she books for guests on a regular basis, yet one she's never actually had the chance to experience herself.
You're going to see the reins in this position. You're going to grab one rein in each hand, fingers facing each other, thumbs facing yourself, and flip the loop.
I had the pleasure of joining Nancy to visit the Sea Ponies, which was one of the weirdest tours I've ever taken. After a safety briefing and an introduction to each of the ponies, which are basically undercover unicorns, we saddled up and headed out to sea.
Here we go! Here we go!
Dreama was pretty calm, moseying into the ocean, and I was surprisingly at ease too. What I typically dislike about horseback riding is the distance between you and the hard ground below. But with Dreama, it transformed into a surreal experience. Ponies love swimming, by the way. Jen's been a lifelong horse enthusiast, and noticing how much her horses loved entering the sea to cool off, she began offering these tours. People travel from around the world to experience the Sea Ponies. It's an experience I don't think I'd ever have signed up for had it not been for Nancy and her enthusiasm.
So Oscar Wilde loved this stuff, and he writes about a time when he was sitting in a bar, and at the end of the evening, he'd been drinking all evening long, drinking absinthe, and at the end of the night, the bartender came out and began to swish down the floor to clean the floor. And when the water hit the stones in the bar, Oscar Wilde saw tulips grow up out of the floor. And as he left the bar, as he walked out to the street, he could feel the tulips brushing against his legs.
Whoa. So I'm looking forward to experiencing this, yeah.
Food is like an experienced thesaurus that allows travelers to use the things that we know to understand new things that we don't. And since restaurant recommendations are such a personal component of the vacation rental host's repertoire, I accepted Nancy's suggestion readily. And once I was introduced to Sean Murphy, I knew things were about to get real.
This attractive group of people had been cocktailing before they got here. Hopefully they will cocktail with us for some time and on into the evening.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that they become loud and obnoxious relatively soon. These two. The guy with his hand over his face is my partner here.
Yeah.
So if they do decide to become loud and obnoxious, there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it.
Sean's one of Anna Maria Island's most fabled restaurateurs, with a handful of establishments and initiatives under his wing. I met him first at his bar, The Doctor's Office, which is named after a local doctor whom I'd come across the next day, and where after about 15 seconds of small talk, Sean arrived with what looked like an antique bird bath.
So you put the sugar cube on top and then light it on fire?
No.
By the time we left the doctor's office for dinner, it had filled up and become a Star Wars bar mix of patrons from all walks of life. We headed over to Sean's flagship restaurant, Beach Bistro, set extraordinarily front and center on the beach.
I believe that the tables are the right size for conversation. So the smaller the table, the less yelling goes on. You can actually have a conversation in a tight group. So then you can't have a great big flower in the goddamn middle. You have to have something that's
damn straight,
tall and elegant, so you can have a conversation around the flower. 32 years to work on that, though. So it's like, you don't have to be that bright, you just have to keep at it.
Sean tells the story of an old Florida through his food. And you can see that hospitality was something ingrained in his personality, stopping by various tables to greet locals and visitors alike.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you, everybody.
To round out my understanding of what Anna Maria Island's all about, Nancy reached out again and introduced me to Captain Dev, who with his big smile and quick wit really embodies a generation of Floridians for whom tourism is both a challenge and a solution. The original plan with Dev was a half-day trip out to Egmont Key, but due to the weather, we decided instead to do a tour of his childhood landmarks. There was the rope swing he discovered when he first got his boat license, the abandoned islands where, as a teenager, he used to sneak off to and party with friends, and the shipwreck.
This is a molasses ship from the 30s? 1930s, that sits at the bottom of the ocean. It's sunk. However, a normal tourist standing on the beach would never see this because you would never know. It's just a little dark spot. But we got Dev, who was introduced to us by Nancy, something of an insider. And we're gonna go down and take a look.
Dev's memories of the old Florida aren't necessarily gone, but they've changed in a lot of ways. How does one ride this wave of change in their own favor? Dev likes to think it's by going with the flow and by keeping his business and his personal relationships tight.
I saw some treasure! Some molasses treasure!
Eventually, all great vacations come to an end. And on the final night before I left, I invited all the people I'd met over to my vacation rental that evening, introducing many of them for the first time to one another. One of the things that really began to crystallize for me in Florida was how, despite their totally different backgrounds and professions and ages and interests, pretty much all of them describe what they love about Anna Maria Island in the exact same way. When the residents, business owners, and the visitors have a precise understanding of what's being offered, and perhaps more importantly, what is not, there's great synergy there. Everyone at dinner spoke a common language of Anna Maria Island, and that can be a really powerful thing.